Hey, everybody. Welcome. It's 11:01 Eastern Time, and it's 5:01 a.m. Honolulu time. And thanks to Vicky for connecting us with Harvey at Han Blue out in Honolulu. He's not going to join us live, but he's going to watch the tape. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to Han Blue and Harvey at there, and thank you, Vicky, for connecting us. It's crazy that, hey, this thing is making it to places outside of the mainland here. So that's awesome. So you guys are in for a treat today because we've got Jack Nicholson here on the set. And so you'll hear from him. He's got some words of wisdom. And then, of course, we've got Adam Boatsman, which will be fantastic. So, and just another thing, just as a reminder, you guys know the drill, use the Q&A button. And I suspect that we'll have some things beyond PPP, but let's keep it to how do we thrive and even survive this this pandemic as business owners. Use the chat to harangue us if you need to. Let me think if there's anything else. I think that's pretty much it. I was just glad I could use monkey poo in the same social media post talking about how Congress is either sleeping or throwing monkey poo on each other. And, you know, the rest of the business owners, we got to get stuff done. So thank goodness for all of you. So Adam, I'm going to kick it over to you first before we get Jack Nicholson on the set. I knew he's getting on. So you got any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to have to really beat Jack's background when you see that. And I was lazy again today, but I'm a huge fan of Christopher Nolan, and I'm a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. So if you guys remember the scene, probably about halfway through the third movie, when Gary Oldman goes up to Matthew Modine's house and says, tries to get him to come out of it. Come on, Foley, come out of the house. And Matthew Modine says, the government's going to help us, other people are going to help us out of this. I don't want to come out of the house effectively. Gary Oldman says, the only help we're going to get is from the inside. Point being that, I don't know, maybe I'm going to be wildly surprised, but given that the entire focus of everything is all on a potential placement of a Supreme Court nominee, which is also election related in of its own sense, I just don't see how this is going to be, as shameful as it is, I don't see how this is going to be a priority, getting something passed. Maybe I'll be wildly surprised. It's just more, just kind of lets everybody set our expectations that do not expect to see anything post-election. If we do, let's be pleasantly surprised at this point. And, maybe Jack will have something more optimistic to say. He's got plenty of time to scramble with that. But today, for once, I'm going to be well, I guess I've always been somewhat cynical. Today, I'm going to be more cynical than normal, related to, I'm not expecting anything. So this is kind of, I think we're in bootstrapper mode until after the new year on this thing. So related to that, I think I've been, mostly in back-to-back meetings with clients. And so this is, I guess a little bit pandemic related, kind of the couple big questions that I keep on getting asked, that kind of vary from general to specific. One is, what, if anything, do you think we ought to do about our loan forgiveness application? I'll just repeat at the start of the call the same thing that we said before, which is you're not going to win a medal for going early. So let's wait until there's more guidance. Let's also wait and see if they actually do something on the disposition of is it going to be income or not, in terms of the ability to deduct the expenses. So that's number one. I think the second thing that I've been asked pretty frequently is, well, how's everybody else doing out there? And, the general, going to be way not PC on this one, Gary, so cover your ears. The general consensus, I think at least within our client base, is that, the people that have been impacted really negatively have been people that have been Yeah, basically considered non-essential and not able to open. That's kind of one group. So, last call that we had, we talked about sports marketing firms. I mean, if you can't have events, you can't have sports marketing. So you're going to have a problem. Um, and then the other category is um, kind of indirect, which is business was dependent upon events happening. So, Gary and I had a call yesterday about office furniture. One of my best friends, Mark, is in the office furniture business. So, at the end of the day, not a whole lot of people signing new leases and moving. There is some demo that's going on right now, but that business has been. If you're in that business, you've been impacted because people aren't really buying stuff right now because they haven't figured out what they're going to do with their offices yet, which kind of bleeds into number three, which is, hey, what's everybody's kind of going back to work strategy? And that's really ranged from, we don't know, we're punting still, to, hey, if you want your paycheck, show up at 1616 Camden. We haven't said that, but I've heard other people, other people have taken that hardline approach. I think ultimately it is time to start putting on your big boy pants and saying, what is our plan actually going to be? Especially for us. I mean, we're not unique in this. Is that the big portion of our hiring population comes from the internship programs at App State and UNCC. So shout out to anybody that is a grad or has a kid going there. And it's a lot of people. Relatively speaking. I think we've got budgeted 8 to 10 people that we're going to have start through the internship program this year, and figuring out how to coach, train, and mentor someone when it's traditionally been a hands-on coaching and mentoring, meaning like literally you got up from your desk, you looked over the cube and said, hey man, how do I do blah blah. You really just can't replicate that in an online environment. And I think we just need to be honest with ourselves that that's going to be a tough one to implement in an online environment. I think, anecdotally, and again, we'd love to hear some examples if you want to do them on the chats or, send them to FAQ@trustbgw.com so we can learn, is that, most of the companies that I'm aware of that are virtual, that hire new graduates, really are hiring people into sales positions or customer support positions where the role's always been home office driven versus pandemic, everybody's going to be at home. I think the lone exception might be if somebody's a software developer. Some of those folks have always kind of had a home working environment. So it's just, it's time to put on your big boy pants and or big girl pants and really focus on what's going to be the right decision organizationally in terms of coming back versus punting on the decision, to wait until in North Carolina, at least, Governor Cooper, puts us in phase 3, because, that's going to happen sooner rather than later. So, I mean, this likely, barring a resurgence, this likely is going to happen, sometime in kind of the January timeframe, just based on the stated intention of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools going back. I mean, you could kind of guess that that's probably when people, and if all of a sudden your answer is come back to the office, I'm sure that everybody will ultimately comply with that, but you might have some disgruntled individuals, and you could take the position that, well, I pay your paycheck, screw you. Or alternatively, which is the approach that I suggest, you could be an adult about it and just say, look, we have the opportunity to change the way that we work. And at the same time, here are the issues that we would have to successfully address to make that happen. Let's just go through that process. Then the last piece, before I shut up, especially as Jack said, hey, can we end the call early today? And I'm all about stretching it. I'm just kidding, Jack. I get paid by the minute over here. Really the last thing that I've tried to hit on with people is, what are you going to do with the cash? Like if you're in a position where, hey, I needed the money, but at the same time, I haven't necessarily needed all of it yet. What's your plans for the cash? And, kind of same advice that we had that was basically based on the lesson learned during the recession is that, if you feel like your downturn is somewhat permanent in nature, as bad as it is, you probably ought to right size the cost structure to make that work. If it's temporary in nature, then, I think it's okay to go ahead and build up your working capital reserve, but at the same time, have some defined trigger points. I think pre-recession, or the recession, which is kind of the closest example that we have to this, we saw a lot of people that have pretty significant, balance sheets, particularly in their cash balances, that watched those balances dwindle to where it became life support. Then they had to make some changes instead of having, kind of predefined trigger points. Hey, we think it's going to be okay. However, if we reach here, this is the milestone at which we'll use to evaluate whether or not it's okay or not. So similar to going back to work, I'd also encourage everybody to start thinking about, what are their milestones, probably going through the second quarter of next year. Now that a lot of our clients do have a decent cash reserve built up, what are our milestones for saying we're okay or, we're not okay, for their own planning purposes. And with that in mind, I will shut up and turn it over to you with the pool of blood. Just kidding, Jack.
Well, yes. So I'm obviously trying to keep the creativity up. A few important facts.
Well, wait a second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It had to be said.
Yeah. I was going to say, here's Johnny. And actually, I didn't know this. I was doing a little bit of research, but on this for no particular reason other than satisfy curiosity. But the line in the movie actually refers to Johnny Carson, as we all thought. But what I didn't know is that Jack, the character, Jack Nicholson, but his name in the movie is Jack, but his full name is John Daniel Edward Torrance. So I thought maybe that's what it was about. And then apparently, when playing Trivial Pursuit, if anybody still plays that the line wasn't in the script. He made it up as he was poking his head through. He made it up on ad lib on the spot. So there you go. Now you have your trivia for the day that you can win the little pizza wedge for your game. I am sorry that I don't have better news. In fact, I didn't even wear my shiny yellow shirt today because it's just, you think about what else can happen in the United States or globally besides the pandemic, besides the wildfires, besides hurricanes, and then adding the stimulus issues, political issues, and then having the Supreme Court justice pass away weeks before an election. And so it's like, again, how many more distractions can you have on a group of people that is responsible for the welfare of the United States economically and otherwise? And so just as a point of example, 470 seats in the US Congress are up for grabs. So that's 35 Senate seats and all of the House seats up for election in November. So, the not to be even more doom and gloom than what Adam said a few minutes ago, the reality is that they are way too distracted to do anything at all at this point. Adding on top of the fact, the whole Senate issue and president issue and the House issue with respect to potential nomination. It is interesting to hear, and this is not a political statement, but hear how, the sides have flip-flopped as to whether it's appropriate for an outgoing president to be able to nominate and put forth and potentially have ratified or installed a Supreme Court justice. Some people are saying, well, it's different because this is the potential beginning of a second term versus the end of the second term, all that stuff. So I'm not going to get into that, but, it's just other things. I've seen some articles that talk about, well, if the Senate does this by this date, mapping out the timeline that would be required to get it through the House, the president signing it, and that's not even the negotiations. So you're well into October, potentially end of October. It's just, hate to say this, but probably NFW that this is going to happen. And so, what we're left with is, oh, I'm sorry, the other distraction, small little distraction, the government's going to shut down unless they find a way to temporarily fund it and keep it going, which always happens. It's always brinksmanship, but add that to the pile of stuff that they're dealing with. So it's just unfortunately not going to happen. I think I'm seeing more of the attitude and perspective that, oh, well, again, and I think I said this last week, the world hasn't completely gone to hell. It's close, but it hasn't. So, we're going to go focus on this other stuff because you really need us to be in Congress in order to continue this process, right? So that's what we're going to focus on. Again, not political, not being demeaning or anything else. It's just the reality of where we're at weeks before a national and local election. So that's all I really got for introductory comments.
Oh, that's okay. That's why monkey poo seemed to be appropriate. But we do have some questions. So Carol, you jumped the gun, which is awesome. You got on before we did. So this is a question from Carol. Is NC state unemployment considered a forgivable payroll cost?
So on the employer side, the taxes that you're paying is considered a forgivable payroll cost.
Cool. All right, David, I knew we could count on you to be on here. So here is the, I got to go back and forth between a couple questions here because, so from David. Sorry if this is an old question. If you rehire an employee in week 20 of the covered period, would you call their annualized, let's see, this is, and then it stops. It's about table 1 of the long form. If you rehire an employee week 20 of the covered period, how do you calculate their annualized salary on table 1? For example, does the 4 weeks they were paid get averaged over the 24-week period, or do you look at their wage rate and just annualize their actual wage?
There's no guidance on interim pieces. So I think if you were to go with the spirit of the law, you would say, well, I mean, at the end of the day, you made them an offer letter and you know what that says, that has a rate of pay. And at the same time, you could equally make a case that, if you use the logic that was associated with the application process itself, people that were hired mid-year, you didn't have to reduce them, even if they were going to make $150,000. So, I kind of lean towards, if I was in a bind, since that one is a gray area and it's not even like on the black side or the white side, it's right dead center down the fairway on the gray area. I probably would look at, what am I going to pay them through the calendar year? Not the annualized, because that is your annualized rate of pay because they weren't with you prior to. So that I could see that also not going your direction. But if I was close and in a pinch, that's probably the way that I would look at it. But I mean, I still also go back to, David's always good with theoretical questions. I really feel like, man, unless you were in absolute shutdown mode, you really ought to be able to make it on a 24-week period. So I would just, try to be as much as by the book as you can be, and just extend your period until you get the math to work right. What do you think, Jack?
I'm going to leave the math up to you today, but logic.
Gotcha.
So
yeah,
sure.
Sounds great. Red rum.
Sorry, if you don't like his answer, David, then I'll look into it. But I'm rolling with him unless you tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
Just remember, though, Jack is a lawyer, and he will bill you by the hour. So, just kidding. All right, next question. This is from an anonymous attendee. For many weeks, I've advised my employer that there's nothing to be gained by filling out our forgiveness application now. I've consistently repeated the great reasoning that's important I've heard on this webinar. Thank you very much. However, this week he advised me that he's thinking of changing banks. What's your opinion on continuing to delay asking for forgiveness based on this happening?
They're two separate issues, because even if you switch banks, it's not like the loan's going to move. Like, this isn't a scenario where, hey, if I'm switching banks, I need to get the line of credit paid off with Fifth Third, and then, Town Bank's going to replace it. First Bank. I probably should say 40 bank names so I don't piss off anybody on the call. Because we love you all, with the exception of Bank of America and Wells. Sometimes we like you, depending on who you are.
I worked at both.
Yeah, figures. They didn't have you roll in a smaller bank. That's why. So I think, the PPP, we have loads of clients that their PPP funding came from a completely separate bank from their actual bank. And that was due to a variety of circumstances. So I view it as, even if you switch banks, that loan's going to stay, wherever it was originated, and whoever your new banker isn't going to factor that into the underwriting process. I would not think. So I wouldn't have any issues with moving on from wherever you're at, and then, leaving the loan outstanding. That would be my default before I consider doing anything different.
Yeah, I would say that I think that I think it has an impact, obviously, because it should be showing as a liability on your balance sheet, and that the loan is outstanding because it hasn't been forgiven. You have money. I mean, you probably have cash, or you've consumed the cash, but you still have the outstanding liability on the loan. That would be part of the decision process in the new lending facility. I don't see a bank really being enthusiastic about taking that over. So like a refinance, as Adam is saying. So I think you end up at the end of the day with two different creditors. And then the issue is, okay, well, are there collateral issues? What collateral can be offered? Not necessarily an issue with PPP, but maybe on the EIDL side of things, if you did give up some collateral on that side of things. But I don't think I think it is appropriate to consider it kind of compartmentalized in two different buckets of lending facilities.
So I'll just make a comment on that end. I'm not a banker, and I wasn't a banker, but I worked in both of those big banks. Actually enjoyed my time, but the one thing that we've seen out of this entire PPP mess is you better have a banker that you know and trust, and they better have the heft behind them and the flexibility to get stuff done, because you may have a great banker, but then a massively bureaucratic bank, or one that just can't get it done, and that's not a good place to be. So it's underscored those two things in particular for me and for my friends that have been also dealing with this. Next question is from Kim. Any idea why I keep getting requests from North Carolina unemployment for information on past employees that live in South Carolina that quit? You can't get unemployment if the employee quit, correct?
Well, remember, they're still going to file. So, I haven't heard of too many circumstances where someone who quit, excuse me.
Bless you.
Bless you.
All day.
That's what I think about your question. Now, all right, so let's think about what happens. I go, if the person quit from you and now they're filing for unemployment, even though technically, they shouldn't apply, I haven't heard of too many cases where the employee just doesn't apply anyway. Because you go into, well, why did they quit? And, they could say, well, I didn't feel safe. I mean, there's a million reasons that, you are not going to be very successful at appealing, quitting. But it would be up to you to then go through the process of denying the claim, going through the appeals process. Everything that we've heard, I don't remember when the dates expire, but I really think in terms of the reestablishing your unemployment bank account, I just have to believe that this entire time period is going to be a pass. Meaning that if the rate is changed due to this, that's going to get challenged in court so fast it's not even going to be funny. because they did say your rate's not could be impacted for a period of time. I just don't I don't know when that period of time expired. So outside of that, if you're like 3 employees ago, they're employers ago, remember, it's still, they're just looking at all possible sources. So you're one of them, Gary might be another and Jack might be the third, and they're trying to tap in all sources to get that person whatever they were supposed to get weekly. So that could be the other reason that you're receiving a notification that so-and-so has gone out of employment. It's because they're trying to draw some from your account to cover it, because what they've got established in the existing employer's account isn't enough to fund what they need to fund. So they're trying to take from all sources. That's what I suspect would be happening in this case.
Yeah, they're allowed to file, and it would be, I think, well, it depends on the employee. I mean, if they feel like that, even though they quit, but it was essentially a constructive termination in their mind, so they were forced to quit, and they might say, well, that isn't a resignation, that is a termination, and so they may try. So it's once the government gets an application for unemployment, they are required to pursue it. And those unemployment officers have heard every story, and they can, they're pretty good at filtering things out to a point where I know my employment law people who directly deal with those officers, basically they have a relationship and say, yeah, this is really what happened. And you kind of get deference that, okay, yeah. Or my guys will say, yeah, it was rough. And unfortunately that person had to be dismissed, or we were potentially going to dismiss, but we are not the ones that initiated the separation of employment. And so you get into those kind of things, but not surprised, you're going to continue to get those because people are going to apply for it, either because they don't know or potentially because their perspective on the separation of employment is more of a termination rather than a resignation.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. Next question is from Karen. And I don't know how to take this because she said, I saw another commentator. Like, what other commentators are there? Be careful on who you're taking advice from. So anyway, here it goes. So another commentator say, PPP loan forgiveness guidance allows for forgiveness applications to be submitted when funds are exhausted using the average FTE ending on that date. The guidance specifically states that forgiveness application date is to be used to calculate the average FTE. Is this how you understand it as well?
Yeah. So I mean, so basically, yes, and then no. So Jack, if you want to fact check me on this while I stall. Basically you've got when I say conflicting, you've got two unclear pieces of guidance that exist. The first unclear item says your cover period is either 8 weeks or 24 weeks. And if you can pick an alternative cover period, but it's still 8 weeks or 24 weeks, you can just start the clock a little bit later, depending on when your payroll date is. And then it says, as soon as your funds are exhausted, you can apply for forgiveness. But it doesn't say, but what do you do if you're using less than 24 weeks? So one assumes that you just use the period that you needed. So if that was 12 weeks, use 12 weeks. If it was 14 weeks, use 14 weeks. And instead of December 31st, 2020, is kind of your, hey, do we get back to square thing? If you were using the 24-week period, you're just going to use whatever your end date was for your test calculation. But it never says that anywhere. Like that's all speculation. Like that's never included in an example anywhere that's been issued to my knowledge. If somebody can fact check me on that, because I always like looking stupid on these calls. That's never been an example that's been used in any FAQ or any presentation or webinar from a government approved source. That's all been speculation. Yeah, I see what you got, David. Even in the slide deck that the SBA published, it doesn't actually include an example calculation. It just says what I said, which is 8 weeks, 24 weeks, but you can apply when you've exhausted the funds, but it doesn't actually specify how you do the calculation itself. And there's not an example. If you found one, David, I would enjoy you making me look stupid. So you kind of left it, hey, I'm going to take my best guess. Best guess is if I use 12 weeks, I'm using 12 weeks. If I used 18 weeks, I'm going to use 18 weeks. And that kind of same logic would filter all the way throughout the remaining schedules and calculations.
Is that the end of the stall period?
Stall complete.
Okay.
Tack.
Right. So I would agree. I think there's some confusion as to, if you apply early or had applied early, and it's outside of the 24-week period, et cetera. I mean, you're making the certification that you're in the money essentially, or you are using your safe harbor, and it just doesn't make logical sense that you would make such certification if you can't really make the certification. You're making an anticipatory certification without the entire period expiring. So, does that mean, okay, you're crossing your fingers to make sure something doesn't happen in that last part of the covered period? Or, if something does happen, let's say you made that assumption and something does happen, do you now have to go back and amend your forgiveness application? So I think that the logic was that, well, wait to the end of the covered period to make sure that you truly are able to certify everything that you need to certify, safe harbors inclusive, and you're included. And so, but yeah, I have not, as far as seeing guidance, particularly on that question, I have not seen anything like that either. And because basically the SBA, Treasury, Congress has been silent on that. I think many people are looking to the next package to fix some things by the implementation of that package. And then whatever those rules are to be interpretations of how, on some of these issues for package number one, is what kind of some of the talk is about. That, well, we're not going to really correct or fill in the holes with package number one. We're going to issue package number two, and then by applying that to package number one, then that answers those questions where those holes are. So again, Jack theory, actually it's not even my theory, it's speculation on different commentators and reporters' parts.
Yeah, and I think my own a boatsmanism. If he's got a Jack theory, I'm going to go with boatsmanism. Look, if you just think about, well, how did this guidance end up coming about? It really, first off, if you have the ability to fill out an easy form, which the people that have the ability to fill out the easy form literally are 8 weeks, no exceptions, period, we're freaking done. But also certifying that I really needed the money because I was impacted due to the pandemic. But it's 8 weeks, no exceptions, bam, I'm out of here. The other people that it would make sense for, when I say make sense, meaning like I'm targeting you when I say you can go ahead and apply when you've exhausted the money. Anytime after you've exhausted the money would be 8 weeks exception applies, which is going to be people that spent the money in the 8 week period that also got funded before they gave you the ability to do the 24 week period. If you were anybody other than that, I don't know why you're rushing to apply, period. And I think it goes back to this guidance is, it says you can apply at any time. It doesn't say, but only if you're 8 weeks easy form or 8 weeks, but prior to receiving this funding date. But to me, that's kind of how I would interpret it, because otherwise, as Jack pointed out, you get into this gray area around, well, what if I did that wrong? Exhausted the funds in 12 weeks, used 12 weeks for the basis of the entirety of the application process. And, something that comes after the fact supersedes it, because my plan was got through 12 weeks and then I fired everybody. after that. I mean, the government, that's not really what the government's looking for here. So
Next question is from Carol. Just to clarify, if we exhausted our PPP funds at the 11-week mark, can we simply elect the 24-week period, but only provide the 11 weeks of data?
no, because I mean, you could, but I don't know why you would apply it. I don't know why you wouldn't use 24 weeks.
All right, Carol, if you want to ping us back if you got any further questions on that, great. Next question. Has a decision been made yet as to who needs to file a loan forgiveness application? We received $45,000, and I was thinking we do not need to do anything else. Is that correct?
It's proposed, between 100,000 and 150,000 and below would just, probably be something like the equivalent of a postcard. And then it would be basically blanket grant forgiveness. But they haven't passed that yet. So if you're below 150, I definitely would not apply for forgiveness because you might be going through hoops for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what will likely happen is that if it's not complete automatic just based on the number, then it will probably be something along the lines of, some sort of easy form. They want to have, I think they're going to want to have some accountability in having some sort of certification, even by low dollar amount borrowers, so that if they have come back. So for example, let's say that there's all these affiliation rules, and let's say that there were 2 applications and they both happened to be under the mark, but one was improper, and making certain certifications that the forgiveness was totally appropriate. So I don't think that even for administrative convenience or efficiency that they're going to say, oh, well, never mind, don't have to do anything. But again, that hasn't been determined. But I just don't see that, even if it's going online to an IRS or SBA web page, putting in your EIN and hitting some check the box clicks, and then electronic signature. In this day and age, that's so easy that I just think that is probably where we end up. But again, Jack theory until they tell us specifically.
Yeah, I kind of agree that if I was suspecting, I think I would say it would probably go that way because the IRS already has that in place for not-for-profits. I don't remember if this is still the asset value or the gross receipts value. It may have raised a little bit, but it used to be 50 grand. You basically do a postcard, but the postcard literally is you go online and check a couple boxes and, keep your not-for-profit status. So there's already an established kind of bar that enforces accountability in still having to do something, but it's extremely simple. That exists. It's just that it's for the not-for-profit world. So I totally could see him doing what Jack just suggested, which is, then the bank gets a list back of, hey, here's everybody that's outstanding for you that checked the box. So.
All right, we have rocketed through a bunch of questions. Anybody else have any other questions before we say sayonara, or Jack Nicholson make some other famous quote from the movie?
While people are thinking about that, I'll make one just general comment, and it's to reiterate something Adam said about, or actually you said, Gary, about having good relationships with bankers. But it's which is important, but it also is, I'm finding an indication of, and I don't know, in one case, one of my clients got his feelings hurt. He thought he had most favored borrower status, and apparently he didn't. And apparently we are not going to be able to close a deal by tomorrow, which is the deadline for the SBA free money. And I call it that, but it's the 6 months of payment of principal and interest that the SBA will pay the lending bank on your behalf. And it's what is also interesting is the deadline that was set, and I don't know, someone was looking at the wrong calendar, but it was set for Sunday. Now, in most other cases, whether it's court timing for court pleadings, whether it's for filing taxes, you get the benefit of it being the next business day if it falls on a weekend or holiday. And in fact, I think in some cases, maybe it didn't happen this year, but there is a federal holiday in DC, and you get the benefit of having that the whole country gets the benefit of having that, or something along those lines. But the issue is that they said, well, we don't, because it's Sunday, we're not going to give you until Monday. If your bank operates on Saturday on a half day, like some banks do, great. But that's really usually for retail type transactions, not business transactions. You don't have the person with their thumb on the launch button of electronic funds working on a Saturday in a bank. So what it really means is Friday. And so you don't get the benefit of that. But my point is that that there's a lot of stuff in the system. So if you are feeling the pain of, all along of not getting the funds on time, of doing the wait and see, not being able to process your forgiveness application if you choose to do so, or even having communications with the bank, you're in the majority of people that are having this issue, even those who thought they had most favored borrower status. And so don't have your feelings hurt. It's just the way it is. Unfortunately, for like in this case, that we're not going to close this deal tomorrow, and it's significant dollars that didn't happen. And I suspect that bank is not going to be the bank that closes this deal and gets the business as of Monday because of this issue. So anyway, just a little bit of commentary on kind of what's going on in the banking world from my perspective, that everything is gummed up, and it's not you, it's them.
That was from another show. All right, we got another question that has come in under the wire. Hey, Twinette, good to see you here. If you're the business owner of an S Corp and set up the owner's salary to match the 8-week period, approximately $15,000 amount. Sorry, typing from the phone anyway. We were advised to choose the 24-week period for forgiveness, but then the rules changed for S Corp owners, capped at $20,000. So what happens now? Tapping.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, what we had people do is to take enough salary to support the full amount that they could get in an S Corp as part of the application process. And that was, whether it was 2019 or it was, hey, we're brand new in business in 2020, which is effectively an annualized $100,000. So in your specific case, I still would take 20 grand worth of payroll during the 24-week period. You might as well maximize forgiveness amount. Now, is there a reason that you should pay yourself, more than 100 grand? Probably not. Is there a reason that if your business is down that you should pay yourself more than that 20 grand? Probably not. But there's no reason not to just go ahead and say, let me take through my payroll through the 24-week period, the max allowable, assuming that the application piece itself supported that decision.
Yeah, and keep in mind that those numbers, the 15K or the 20K, isn't a cap on actual salary paid or to be paid. It's a cap on what is forgivable for use of proceeds. So you could pay somebody 100 grand, but only get 20K or 15K forgiven, is essentially, and you can only seek to get that forgiven as part of your forgiveness application. So, hopefully I didn't mess up any CFOs or others who are, have been saying, hey, we can't pay you that much, Mr. Owner, but that's just the reality.
All right, and this is last call for any other questions. Feel free to hit us, but you can kind of hear that dinger move it in the background.
Saved by the bell.
Well, I will just say this as a reminder. Yes, we will have this thing up on the BGW YouTube channel, and that'll be up in a couple hours. So by the time that the folks in Honolulu wake up, this will be ready for them to review. We plan on being back here, same bat time, same bat channel next week. Whether Congress is doing anything or not, we still know that there are questions out there and we want to help. So thank you for everything you guys do. Thank you, Jack Nicholson. Be careful out there. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, David. Thank you, Adam. You guys have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the week out there. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.